Okay, perfect.
So, thank you, first of all, for coming. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. I know how difficult this is. I know how difficult, as a school counselor, it is to sort of teach some of this content and also to work directly with students who have depression or some of the other content that we teach in this class. So I thank you for bringing your daughter to us, or sharing your daughter with us, and to changing basically how things are done around the state for people who can have a direct impact on other children. You set out to create a law.
Um, it came because of having a lot of, I call them closed doors. And after losing Lauryn, 5 weeks later, one of her best friends attempted suicide.
Oh.
And he was dealing with a lot at home. He had just, his father was displaced because of immigration. He wasn't in the home. His mother now had to become a single parent and take care of 2 kids. And then, of course, the suicide loss of his best friend. When he got back to school, it became a little bit tedious for him, and I didn't understand why. 5 weeks later, he attempted. He wasn't the only one. I called and I started speaking to multiple of Lauryn's friends and their families, because what I noticed was during my grief, right after I lost Lauryn, I was getting a lot of phone calls from a lot of her friends, because Lauryn, anywhere that she went, if she had her phone and her phone died, all of her friends that were the closest to her and had a phone, they all had my phone number. So Lauryn would always send me messages through her friends' phones. So when we lost her, her friends were reaching out, but I wasn't paying attention to my phone. I was caught in my grief.
Mm-hmm.
So when her best friend had attempted 5 weeks later, it really made me pay attention to my phone. I started seeing all the messages where the kids were confused and they were crying, and they felt that the teachers didn't understand what they were going through and the parents didn't understand. And I kind of figured that I was the most broken person in the world,
Right.
to attempt to try to help the kids. So I reached out to the school, and I specifically called her principal, and I didn't get a hold of him until April the 11th.
Okay.
And then when I had a long conversation with Principal Jones, we went into detail, and I expressed to him what I was witnessing was what I assumed was an epidemic. I didn't know that it was the ripple effect of suicide. So because of my ignorance and not knowing, I assumed it was an epidemic, and I said, listen, there's something going on. A lot of her friends are having a serious effect with regards to her suicide. They don't know what to do. You need to hold an assembly. I give you permission. Please send out a newsletter or an email, do a robocall.
Right.
Please inform these parents that there is something extremely serious going on. They need to pay attention to these kids. And he said, oh, well, don't worry about it. We're going to take care of it. The school counselors, they know that what their responsibilities were. And in this conversation, he said something that didn't resonate to me until later, which was, it's the responsibility of the school counselors that they are to meet with freshmen because of the different acts of bullying, the different cliques, certain mean things that may happen, the guidance not being able to cope on the different life of middle school to high school.
So transitional
So
issues.
the transition is that all the school counselors were supposed to meet with all of the freshman students, even if it was for a few minutes, just to be able to, confirm and see what's going on with them, and if they're having any issues coping with being in high school. And it didn't dawn on me because Lauryn never met her school counselor before she died. So as, the end of the school year was coming, I was waiting for that phone call. No phone call, no message, no email, no robocall. Nothing went out to the students saying, hey, listen, due to the recent illness or loss of one of the friends, we really want parents to understand, here is a number, here's a suicide hotline number, here's the Maryland Crisis Center number.
Something.
here's something, please reach out if your child needs any help. So school ended, and there was nothing. And what I was noticing was, um, in accessing my daughter's Instagram account,
Okay.
I started seeing suicide notes and suicide letters because the kids thought that she couldn't see her account anymore and had no clue that I even had access to it. And then I
So
started.
they were posting the notes on your
They were
daughter's
posting private messages that no one else could see except Lauryn.
So sweet.
So I started seeing all of the notes, and as the end of the school year was coming, I was getting extremely worried because some of the letters and the suicide notes that I was seeing was, I can't believe that I went to class today and the teacher stopped class because I was crying and I'm sitting next to your empty chair. And when the teacher asked me why I was crying and I said I just missed Lauryn, the teacher's response to me was, well, aren't you over her yet? Everyone dies. And I just can't believe this. It's just time for me to die. Nobody cares that you died, not the teacher, not my parents. And I was just heartbroken.
Absolutely.
And I was like, well, what else? And then I kept going, and then there were more and more letters, and it was just heartbreaking to me that these kids were going through this. So by this time it's May, and I'm like, what am I gonna do? I have no clue. How am I supposed to help them? I'm broken. I don't know what to do. I don't even know how I lost her to suicide. And that's when I just decided, let me just start doing some online training. I joined the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention.
Nice.
I started doing some volunteer with them. I started researching. I went to bullying.gov. I started doing so many things with regards to trying to learn and bring in as much as I can. And at the same time, because now it's June, school is over, the summer is here, I'm now seeing other kids that are going through things. I now found out that another friend had attempted suicide,
Wow.
and she was 13. And school is out. Who am I supposed to go to? The teachers aren't there. I don't know what's going on. No material had been sent out like I requested.
Support, right.
So then I decided, well, maybe I need to go to the school board. And I started sending emails and reaching out to the Prince George's County school board, and I didn't get anything. And then finally I reached out to Dr. Eubanks, who was the president of the Prince George's County Board of Education. And I sent him an email and I pleaded with him and I said, please, something needs to be done, and it needs to be done before these kids go back to school. I'm still getting all of these messages. These kids are literally wanting to die. They're hurting. And at the same time, I'm trying to reach out to the kids, but how am I going to reach out to the kids without giving out my one source of proof that these kids are in danger, which was her Instagram account. So then that's when I didn't have an Instagram account, and I was like, I'm going to have to create an Instagram account and then try to figure out how I can friend these kids as myself as opposed to through Lauryn's Instagram account. And that's how I started slowly but surely reaching out to these kids and speaking to these kids and messaging back and forth with these kids and just being able to give them a resource to be able to open up to and not be judged. Right. And that's when I really started to understand, wow, the ripple effect of suicide and how one death from suicide can truly disrupt 100 lives. Absolutely. And that's when I was like, well, let me learn, what is this and what am I supposed to do? And that's when I started to become a gatekeeper. Whenever and start training as a gatekeeper with regards to suicidal ideations and trying to assist in kids with regards to prevention and spreading knowledge and spreading awareness without trying to sit here and seem like, okay, just because you lost your daughter doesn't mean I'm going to lose my daughter, because that's what I was actually being met with.
Right.
Just because you lost yours doesn't mean mine
That's
is suicidal.
Right.
And they had no clue. Their child actually was suicidal.
Right.
But I couldn't come out, because when they confronted the child,
they would deny it.
The child would deny it. So it was like, wow, okay, this is really becoming extremely complicated. What am I supposed to do? So then, finally, Dr. Eubanks responded back to me and told that superintendent, the former superintendent before Dr. Maxwell, he said, I want you personally to meet with Linda Diaz, and I want you to hear. And by that time, I had so much material. I had so much that I could offer them with regards to this is what we need to do. So then they called a meeting with the school's student services office and other people, and we came in and I provided copies. I showed them the letters. I printed out the text messages. I printed out the Instagram messages. I showed them what these kids were going through. And they said, no, you are absolutely correct. Something needs to be done. And then they finally reached out to Principal Jones, which was Lauryn's principal at Laurel High School, and said, you need to have a mental health awareness meeting at the school. I want you to send out something. I want you to do something. And, this needs to be done immediately. I want this done before school starts.
Right.
And he had not reached out. So what I ended up doing was reaching back out to the Prince George's County Board and said, I haven't heard from from Principal Jones what's going on. So he did finally get an assembly together. It was like a back to school night assembly in September of 2014, of 2013, before everybody was going to go back to school, to see if but it wasn't broadcasted. Nothing was really sent out, so there were only a few people that actually showed up. So, did it help? No, it didn't help, because there was no material.
He didn't address the problem.
He didn't really address the problem. All he did was said, well, listen, we do have some resources. The counselors are more prepared and things like that. But the kids were the issue. The kids still kept posting messages. Then the kids actually started to kind of say, hey, listen, Lauryn's mom is available. Text Lauryn's mom. Send a message to Lauryn's mom. If you need help, she will get you help. By this time, I'm still going, excuse me, Principal Jones.
That's a big burden.
Something needs to happen.
You're one person.
I'm one person. In my eyes, I was the worst person. I was still trying, 23 hours out of the day. I was trying to help save these kids. And he was like, we already have things worked out. We've got things that, we're working on and things like that. And I'm like, okay, well, I can't see it because
they're still reaching out to you.
These kids, and by that time, it wasn't just Laurel High School. It was Eleanor Roosevelt High School. It was High Point High School. It was Deerfield Middle School. It was Martin Luther King Middle School. By now, it had gotten so far out of hand, and I started getting videos of kids being bullied in the classroom and being threatened while the teacher was teaching class. It was just really, really, really bad. And I was like, there's something that needs to be done. These kids really need help. By this time, the second child had attempted suicide for the second time. 13 years old. By now, we're going on a year and a half after Lauryn left. 3 suicides. It was multiple kids were now being diagnosed with manic depression and PTSD from being bullied, from Lauryn's suicide. In my eyes, it was just getting worse. Nothing was being done. And what a lot of the staff didn't realize was that Lauryn was a freshman. All of her classmates were freshmen. Wow. She had classmates that were still in middle school that were going to be coming out. The the mental aspect of what all of these kids were going through, because not just because of Lauryn's suicide, but because of domestic violence at home and school, and trying to do good in school and concentrating on school. Lauryn's suicide, the depression, the kids who were suffering from the guilt of Lauryn sending them a text message or Lauryn reaching out to them. I had no idea that these kids were also now suffering from the guilt. If they would have reached out when Lauryn sent a message, if they would have reached out when Lauryn called them, if they would have returned Lauryn's messages, maybe Lauryn would be here. So now it's the other kids that were coming behind her with all of the what ifs. And I was just like, something needs to be done. Nothing is being taken care of. By this time, Councilmember Mary Lehman in May of 2014 had decided she was going to have a mental health awareness event at Laurel High School.
Nice.
And what better place to have it except the school where Lauryn was at. And the notice wasn't put out, the flyers weren't shared. Then here we go, now kids are now being upset because there is an event that was supposed to be done in honor of Lauryn that wasn't advertised in the school. So now we have the hatred against the school. And all that's doing is it's a risk factor. It's yet another risk factor. These kids are already broken.
Right.
They're depressed. And now we are adding more things on top of it because of them not being notified. So then they're upset because they didn't make that event. They didn't know that event was there. So now we're going on to a completely different side of what's going on. So now we have the what ifs. We have the missing events. We have the lack of information, the lack of support, the ignorance of mental health, the ignorance that kids can suffer from PTSD from Lauryn's suicide. It's spreading like wildfire.
Right.
I had no idea. So now I reach back out to the Prince George's County School Board,
right?
And I'm like, you've got a new superintendent. Dr. Maxwell is here. Something needs to be done. And I set up a phone call.
Nice.
I get a meeting with Dr. Maxwell, and I'm on that phone with Dr. Maxwell. And I hold no punches when I sit here and I say that when I got into that meeting, it's a phone call. When I got into that phone call meeting with Dr. Maxwell, and he was given a little bit of information of who I was, so I expressed to him that I am, Lauryn's mother. Lauryn was lost to suicide in 2013, and there's a serious ripple effect and lack of education with regards to suicide loss and the actual illness that is attached with the risk factors of life that her suicide seems to be a part of. And these kids really need help. And Dr. Maxwell told me with absolute certainty and clarity that mental illness was not what he was truly concerned with. His only objective at that time was violence in the schools.
Wow.
And I expressed to Dr. Maxwell at that time that you do understand that violence in the school is also an actual risk factor with regards to suicide. And
how did you take that?
And reaching out in bullying and violence,
prevention, right?
Everything is still related to mental illness. You really need to add this to your agenda. And he again said, that's something that we will look at some other time. It is not my concern. My only concern at this moment is violence in school.
Wow.
And that's when I said, well, thank you very much, sir. I can see that I'm probably going to have to try to do something else because this is a part of the violence that you're experiencing, but you can't see that. But thank you very much for the time that you have given me. And he's, thanked me, and we ended our phone call, and I got off the phone and I must have cried for like 3 days.
Wow.
And I was just like, what am I supposed to do? Now the first superintendent who left said, you are absolutely right, we need to do something. The new superintendent said, I don't care. Violence is my only concern, not mental illness. And I was like, wow, what am I going to do? So all of the emails and everything that I did in reaching out to Laurel High School, the principal, the Prince George's County Board of Education, the superintendent, the student services director, everyone that I had reached out to, I actually, because I worked in IT and I'm an IT professional, I decided that I was going to compress all of that information into one file.
Okay.
My background is, of course, I do research and procurement and development, so I know how to research things. So hence the reason why I threw myself into learning about
all the things to help
everything,
children. Right.
Exactly, about mental illness and what I missed with regards to Lauryn's suicide. So I decided, okay, I'm going to take a stab at this. And I turned to Annapolis and I brought up all of the legislators for the state of Maryland and I researched them all. And I looked into all of the legislators that had a background specifically related to children and family.
Oh, nice. And
when I did that, I came up with approximately 4 names. 2 of them were in my county and 2 were out the county. So Rosa Pep and Jocelyn Pena-Melnick were the 2 that I picked out.
Right.
And I focused on them, but I sent all 4 an email. And I finally sat down, I wrote an email. I took that compressed file,
right,
and I sent my email and that compressed file specifically to them, not through the website where you can contact your legislators. I physically pulled their emails off of the committee website and sent them an email.
Nice.
And by 10 o'clock that night, Delegate Jocelyn Pena-Melnick reached out to me, and she sent me an email, and she says, I need you to call me right now.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, it's 10 p.m. at night. You want me to call you right now? And she said, yes. So I picked up the phone, and I called her, and I explained everything that we went through.
Right.
And I said, I don't see anything. I don't see anything that physically says that mental illness or behavioral awareness is something that the school is supposed to make sure that these kids have support for.
Right.
I don't see it. The school counselors, in reaching out, the school counselors, even when I spoke to the school counselor with regards to Lauryn, when I was on the phone with her, she chastised me for reaching out to her. And I explained to the delegate that when I called Lauryn's school counselor and I said, listen, there's something wrong. Lauryn is not eating the foods that she likes. She's not interested in hanging out with her friends. She just wants to stay up in her room. She doesn't do anything that she likes to do anymore. And most of all, her grades are slipping. And I reached out to her teachers, and the key factor is that her 2 favorite subjects are math and science, and those are the 2 subjects that she's slipping on. And I reached out to the teachers, and I got no help from the teachers. And when I finally got no response from the teachers, I finally reached out to the school counselor, and I said, listen, I really need you to talk to Lauryn. She just won't tell me what's going on. Every time I ask her what's going on, she just keeps telling me that she's okay. So initially the school counselor said, well, in looking, at her grades right now, you need to tell her she needs to get her act together because, she's going to fail these classes. And I said, well, listen, you need to look at her school maps. She's an honor student. You really need to look at that. And you need to understand what I'm trying to say to you. Right. There's something wrong. Her grades are key. They can't keep slipping, and she's getting more and more, just disgusted with the fact that she can't get the help that she wants with regards to her grades. You need to help her.
Right.
You need to call her down to your office. She finally put me on hold, went and looked at school maps, came back, and sure enough, honor student, never missed a day of school, always
Doing what she's supposed to be.
always doing what she was supposed to be doing. No complaints. She was an awesome child. You're right. Something's wrong. There, her grades are clearly showing that something's wrong. I'm gonna call her down this morning. And I was like, wonderful, perfect. Sent Lauryn a text message. Lauryn, the school counselor is gonna call you down. Whatever you can't tell your school, you can't tell me and you can't tell your sister, please be honest. Share it with your school counselor.
Right.
And she sent me a message back and she said, thanks, Mom. I'll be honest. I can't take this anymore. So when I picked her up that day and I asked her how everything went, to my surprise, Lauryn said the school counselor never called her down. I blamed myself. I said, well, I'm sorry, sweetheart. My fault. I called her out of the blue and, maybe she had a full schedule and she couldn't get you down. Let me call her, let me make an appointment, and I'll get you another appointment in there with her, okay?
Right.
And then I called and I left a message and I got no return call. I called the front desk and I left a message. No return call, nothing happened. And to be very honest with you, nothing ever needed to happen because a few weeks later, Lauryn was gone.
Oh, my God.
So the school counselor could have helped. Do I blame the fact that Lauryn is no longer here on the school counselor? No. Do I blame the individuals who bullied Lauryn? No. Do I blame anybody for not being there for her when she was crying out? No. Lauryn left. Lauryn made the decision to die by suicide. It was no one else's decision. It was only Lauryn's decision. But Lauryn could have been helped. If I weren't ignorant and thought
you
that,
know now.
right, now I know. I saw the signs. She grew up, she was painfully shy. She grew up, she had traumatic issues in her life. She survived her father attempting to kill us. She lived being taunted and alienated and put aside and treated badly by our family members. She dove herself. I had a motto in my house. My kids were 10 years apart. My oldest child hated school. So my rule was you can never get anything below a C. That was it.
Right.
You got below a C, then we have issues and you get punished. I should have known that there was an issue with Lauryn when her grades slipped because Lauryn told me that me setting the bar at having nothing less than a C was unacceptable. She said an A was the bar, and anything under an A was unacceptable. So there were signs. Everything that she went through as a child, when she got older, she focused and she put it into school. She made herself feel better by excelling and getting great grades. She was a product of a heroin-addicted father. There were so many different risk factors in life that all led up to Lauryn's final decision to leave. It wasn't just, the bullying was the last straw.
Right.
That was it.
Well, you certainly have a lot of forgiveness in your heart. Your capacity is enormous. So
it's definitely the only way that I can live. I cannot live with the anger. I cannot live with, I did, of course, everyone who loses a family member, not just a child, but everyone who loses a family member to suicide, they live with that what if for the rest of their life. Absolutely. They never get rid of it. Right. And I did that, not knowing.
Right. Absolutely.
I did it for the first
Yeah.
3 to 5 weeks
Well, the
after
pain,
I
that
lost
hurting,
her.
right.
It's like, what did I do wrong? What if I? And what if I?
Right.
And then after I thought about it, well, when I started to see the symptoms, the headaches, the loss of focus, the slipping of grades, the slight anger spurts, the loss of interest in what she was doing, and not wanting, to hang out with her sister and I like she normally does, and wanting to go out with her friends with the severe withdrawals. When I realized that all of those were the signs, then it hit me. Clarity. And that's when I sat here and I said, wow, well, I called the school counselor. And when I called the school counselor, I hit her with 4 of the 5 major signs. Lauryn's grade slipping, Lauryn's withdrawal from what she liked, her lack of focus. I mean, the sleepy, the stomach pains. I actually gave the school counselor the signs. Why didn't she catch it?
Right.
And that's when Delegate Jocelyn Pena-Melnick and I actually started to kind of put 2 and 2 together, because that was the key.
Right.
I'm mom. I did everything I could. I took her to the doctor.
Called the school.
I called the school. I did everything that I could. What else did I miss? And it wasn't...
So together with the delegate, you sort of problem solved where you saw a void and a need.
Absolutely.
Fascinating.
Absolutely. So I saw the void. I saw that I wasn't an absentee parent.
Right.
I worked from home, so I was able to be able to see a lot of things. Lauryn was very active. I saw that because she was active, it actually deterred her possible suicidal ideations that were already lying there.
Right.
That she
From
didn't
the
know
trauma,
from the trauma
right,
and
all
everything.
Of the things
It was just dormant, and it was just waiting for the next risk factor to come before the suicidal ideation started to hit. And then the 13-year-old that attempted twice, Lauryn confessed to her the suicidal ideations, and she went to Lauryn's middle school counselor when Lauryn was in the 8th grade. Lauryn had suicidal ideations in the 8th grade.
Wow. And
the child actually went to the school counselor and told the school counselor in the 8th grade that Lauryn said that she, was suicidal. But the school counselor had pulled her information and noticed that Lauryn was an honor student and said, it's okay, it's a phase, she'll be fine. She also went to the school secretary at the middle school and asked for my phone number. And the school secretary said, I can't do that, that's private information. And she had mentioned to the school secretary that Lauryn has, bad thoughts, and she wanted to reach out to me. Well, instead of the secretary possibly reaching out to me, she just told the child no, she couldn't give her my information. And then we get to high school now. So Lauryn graduates from middle school and gets to high school, and she's already depressed.
Right.
And then the last thing that she needed was the bullying in the fall of 2012 with regards to her sexuality. Okay. And that was it. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. That was the final risk factor, and that was her possibly planning. Her hopelessness was gone. Right. There was no matter how much she knew I loved her, it was gone. And then to top it off, the young man in December of 2012 who had plotted in Laurel High School a massacre from bullying. Another freshman, a classmate of Lauryn's, had actually his plot to kill all of the bullies and the administration for not caring or doing anything about his bullying. He was actually institutionalized. Wow. And I didn't know until I picked Lauryn up from school that that's what was going on, because I dropped.
So that was out in the school?
That was out in school.
Wow.
All of the major news media outlets were out, and I had dropped Lauryn off at school. And when I found out that it was a plot that was foiled from a child that was being bullied, I immediately ran back to the school to go and get Lauryn, and I physically held her and I cried. And we specifically spoke about bullying
what to do.
and depression, and knowing that she had just been bullied.
Right. And you knew something was wrong. Right?
Something, sweetheart, if you ever feel that something, that you can't talk, please go to your school counselor. Please let your school counselor know. If you can't speak to Sissy and I, please go to your school counselor.
Right.
And it was all of this that we had discussed, because when Delegate Jocelyn Pena-Melnick and I met, she also brought in Prince George's Council member Mary Lehman, who I did not know had literally just lost her brother to suicide.
Oh, wow.
So we all sat here and I expressed everything that I went through, all of the avenues, everyone that I reached out to, learning about what happened to Lauryn, what these kids were going through, the bullying,
right.
the domestic violence, the abuse at home, the sexual assault, all of these things is what these kids were going through. And Lauryn's suicide was just another thing that was added. And no wonder the ripple effect of suicide was so prevalent and so heavy. The only good thing was that these kids could reach out to me. But again, I'm broken. I'm not a clinician.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a psychiatrist.
Right. It's
I'm
an
not
awesome
a
responsibility
psychologist. I could not bear this on my own to be able to save these children. So it was like when I finally reached out to legislation and I said, I can't do this by myself. Somebody needs to do something. The school counselors need to do something. I can't do this.
Right.
This is too much for me. And that's when we realized that the Maryland State Board of Education had never required that specific training, that emotional and behavioral awareness, what these kids were going through, and being, coming to class and going to class and showing up in class and knowing that these kids, because it made sense, these kids would go to school and if they put their head down, they got chastised by the teacher for putting their heads down. Another suicide note to Lauryn.
Right.
These teachers, they don't care. These counselors, they don't care. They don't even care that you died. They don't do anything for us. We can't have a memorial service for you because they said that, they're not condoning anything that Lauryn did. All of these things were adding to these children, and what they were teenagers.
Right.
They were going through puberty. They were going from middle school to high school.
And they lost their friend.
They lost their friend. Their parents were getting divorced. They were being sexually assaulted. All of these different things were happening to these kids. And the counselors had no clue.
Right.
It was there. It was prevalent. The outbursts, the anger, the loss of focus, the drop in grades. The kids were literally being chastised in their eyes by the counselors for grieving. And that's when the law, it was when we started, going through everything and pointing everything out. Delegate Jocelyn Pena-Melnick and Council Member Mary Lehman said, we need to do something about this. There's something going on. There's something wrong. Something's missing. Right. You should not have had to do this. By that time, I was showing up in classes. I was going to the schools. I was demanding to speak to the children that were writing suicide notes. I basically became a haunting menace in Prince George's County with regards to trying to save these kids. They weren't my kids,
right,
but somebody needed to do something because these kids literally felt like no one cared.
Did you ever reach out to the parents of those children?
I did try to reach out to some of the parents of the kids.
Was that a challenge?
And it was an absolute challenge. It was an absolute challenge because in their eyes it was, I don't need you telling me what to do with my kids, or you know, there's nothing wrong with my child. My child doesn't need your help. I can do this, you know, we can take care of our child. We don't need your help.
Were you surprised by that reaction?
I was floored by that reaction. And, you know, one of the many things that I was going through after I lost Lauryn was, and I didn't realize it then, Lauryn used to ask me a lot of questions, and I didn't realize why. And it turned out that a lot of the kids that I ended up helping, they knew that they could reach out to me. Because a lot of the questions that Lauryn used to ask me when she was alive was that child's question.
You were hearing in their voice.
And they came to me, and they specifically said to me, Lauryn was there for me, and I wasn't there for her when she needed me. And she gave me so much good advice because she said, I asked my mom, and my mom said this. And that's literally what I was living with every time I turned around. And I just couldn't fathom the thought of these adults not paying attention to their children.
Right.
I lost my child. I'm trying to save your child, not mine. Mine is already dead. I can't do anything for mine. Why would these parents ignore me?
Right.
Why would these teachers ignore me? Why would the principals ignore me? Why didn't anybody want to do anything to save these other kids? I wasn't crazy. It wasn't a figment of my imagination. These things were real, and they didn't believe me. And that was the most discouraging thing. And then when Delegate Jocelyn Pena-Melnick reached back out to me in 2015, because when I initially met with her,
so that was 13 to 15.
It was 13.
Wow.
It was 13. It was actually September of 2014 when I finally got fed up and I reached out to Delegate Jocelyn Pena-Melnick, and we started. We're still doing research. I was sending her information, and we were corresponding back and forth. And then on January 25th of 2015, she wanted to surprise me. And she surprised me when she got the blue back from the legislation.
Yeah.
She had not only discovered where that flaw was and what needed to be done, but she did, with the fact that of me doing everything that I was doing and still fighting to help the kids, she waited until January 25th, which was the day before Lauryn's birthday, to call me and tell me that they had filed Lauryn's law, yes, that they had filed House Bill 920, and that it was going to be geared towards the recertification of the school counselors for the state of Maryland.
Wow.
So she called me the day before Lauryn's birthday to let me know that she got the blue back.
That's wonderful.
And I said, okay, well, what do we need to do now? So I went in there and I walked into every delegate's office, and I walked into
like lobbying for the bill.
Lobbying for the bill. I went and I picked up the bill. I went and picked up the blue back. I actually physically went into every single office, and I spoke to every single delegate's executive assistant or their any assistant that was in there. I went to the senator's side, I spoke to the Senate side, I spoke to everyone that was in their office and all of their executive admins in hopes of getting a lot of support and a lot of backers for the bill. By that time, now Mayor Catherine Pugh, who was then Senator Catherine Pugh, she had also decided to tackle the bill from the Senate side to have a Senate bill. Yes, so one bill from the Senate side and one bill from the House
Perfect.
side.
So they didn't have to marry.
So they didn't have to marry them. So what ended up happening was I testified for both.
Oh, which one?
Bill, yes, I did. I ended up testifying for both House Bill 920 and at that time Senate Bill 251.
So clearly there's a lot of emotion in everything that you just said, and I really appreciate your honesty and your expression of your journey, and certainly in honor of your daughter. Would you? What I really appreciate in your words is how the anger that had to be there,
Mm-hmm.
but the forgiveness that sort of outweighed the anger, which is wonderful and admirable, and then you to sort of take the mom approach and
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, I'm fighting these battles I can't help my daughter. I'm trying to help other people's children who have reached out to me,
Mm-hmm.
and to turn that into such a positive energy is really admirable. And what I like about this is that you truly are having an impact on school counselors throughout the state. And ironically, in the course, we've had some students from other states take this course. So it does extend beyond Maryland, which is a wonderful thing. And a sort of a simple question, or can you just share, what was the biggest challenge in going from raw emotion to a bill, to a law? What was the biggest challenge of all of that?
The biggest challenge was at that time I thought would have been the Maryland State Board of Education.
Oh, resisting that.
I honestly thought that they would resist it. I didn't think, because it's for so long they had actually been doing. It's almost like being dictated to. I'm fighting to have legislation to tell
people to do this, right?
To tell them what they needed to do.
Right.
And for House Bill 920, I honestly thought that they would have been the biggest challenge. I thought that getting the support, I honestly thought that getting the signatures, getting the other legislators to be able to jump in, to be able to hear me, to be able to understand, because the stigma of mental illness and suicide is so enormous, and nobody wanted to deal with it.
Well, and you also have people who want to do the right thing.
Yes.
And there's fear. And if you do something, you're going to hurt or offend. So the humanity of it is that sometimes no action is causing more disruption
and that's exactly what it was. And
intention.
So when I realized that the Maryland State Board of Education was not responding, they did not deny or denounce the bill.
Okay. So that's a positive,
way.
Right? So did you view it as positive?
I viewed that as a positive because they were staying
neutral, right?
Yes, they were staying neutral and pretty mute on. They sent a letter and they said, we understand this. We have things in place. We don't require that the school counselors have to be recertified or anything like that. So we don't agree, but we don't disagree with the law. They were going to wait to see what legislation did. And it just so happens that by the time the bill actually made it through from both sides of the House, almost every senator and almost every delegate had actually signed on to sponsor and back the bill. That's
highly unusual as well. I'm sure in the state I'm sure they had to share. I don't know what the statistics would be, but I don't think that's a normal occurrence.
It's not a normal occurrence.
Oh.
And
so you struck a nerve.
So I did. I unfortunately struck a nerve.
In a positive way.
In a very positive way. In a very positive way. And so when both the House passed and the Senate passed the bills unanimously.
That's amazing.
It was amazing. And then the next hurdle was the governor has the ability to veto it and deny it.
Oh.
And when I said the bill dropped in January 25th of 2015, and we had the actual hearings in both the Senate and the House of Delegates simultaneously, then I got the phone call that the governor was signing the law on May the 12th of 2015. And that
what a journey.
was I didn't know at that time, but it was very shocking.
How fast?
Because that bill was dropped and passed unanimously through both houses, was supported but not truly supported by the Maryland State Board of Education, and then signed into law by the governor in the short amount of time. I was told that never happens.
That record, right?
Yeah, that never happens. Right. And so I thought that was amazing, and that was great. And
so one other question I had, through your journey, what would you want if you had the opportunity to share directly with parents, teachers, counselors, administrators, some of whom will be in this class? But if you could share or be able to share a message, what would you say to them?
I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you because not all of them are going to be parents, but they assume a role, a very important role in the life of a child. And children will act out in so many different ways.
Absolutely.
Lauryn was very shy. She didn't like to disrupt her class. So therefore, teachers kind of looked at her as not participating in class. And I actually had to express to the teachers that Lauryn was painfully shy. They could just work with her with regards to becoming comfortable and opening up. And then you have the children who are not shy. You
right.
have the children who are
it's
disruptive.
Unique. It's different in every way.
Every single child is different.
Absolutely.
No two children are going to be alike. And I applaud every teacher, and I applaud every counselor and every administrator that is out there, because they are performing a duty and they are with our kids. And it is unfortunate that what I am begging for is community. Mm-hmm. And I literally emphasize the unity in the word community, because now it takes more than just a parent to be able to raise a child, to be able to provide children the coping skills that they need in a classroom, in a home environment, outside of a home environment. We all need to work together. I have never put down, and I will never put down a teacher. I have loved, respected, and worked peacefully with every one of Lauryn's teachers from the time that she was in grade school until the time that she left. I have gotten letters and notes from teachers after Lauryn passed, because to them, their favorite student was lost.
They had a loss as well.
They had a loss. Mm-hmm. They lost. I didn't just lose Lauryn. I didn't just lose
the community,
the daughter. The community lost a vision of hope and a soul, which lies dormant in all of these kids that need our help. And I just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to every teacher that is out there, that listens, that learns the signs, that goes above and beyond to understand the behavioral awareness. Bullies are not made. Bullies are literally created from birth. They're not from being a child. They're not born that way. Right. They're exposed to it. The disruptions in class, the shy kids, the extremely athletic child, the extremely academic child, the underlying basis of OCD that these children have. In order for these children to be able to understand what they're going through, the teachers that take the courses that didn't wait for Lauryn's law, the school counselors that were taking courses before Lauryn's law, the teachers and the counselors that have supported me and sent me messages and thanked me for Lauryn's Law, because they felt as though that Lauryn's Law was absolutely something that everyone needed, because it was something positive, not to make them do something, but to be able to provide them the ability to share and go beyond what they normally do for these kids. Right. So I'm thankful. I'm thankful for all of them. That's
a great message. Now, my last question is, as you know, Goucher was the first college in the state of Maryland to offer a class to meet the state law requirement for your, in honor of your daughter. And I know that Goucher has sort of partnered with you to allow you access to my class and to and just some thoughts on that. The feedback we were talking before we started filming, but what were your thoughts about the class and some of the things that you observed?
I think it's wonderful. I think it's wonderful. In reviewing the course, I think it's amazing. There is no better knowledge than literally being educated. The unfortunate ignorance of mental illness and what mental illness actually derives from, and the risk factors that come from life that provide the triggers with regards to mental illness and how individuals respond. Seeing the course, going over the course, and seeing the videos with the counselors and how much they appreciate it. And some of them literally said, I thought I knew everything, and taking this course has now opened my eyes. Some of them literally said, I had a child in my class that I recognized the signs because of this class, because of this course. And they said they were able to provide assistance because of the signs that they would have never even known before this class. So that is the reason why I am so appreciative and so supportive and will stand behind this course. Because what you're doing is you're providing the tools and giving these beautiful teachers who, to me, don't get paid enough to sit here and do what they do, providing them the tools to be able to look at these kids and save lives. And not just their kids, but family members, other people.
It's a ripple effect in a positive way.
Exactly. Absolutely. It's a ripple effect in a positive way. So when individuals say they don't want to speak about suicide awareness or behavioral awareness or emotional well-being in school because it glorifies suicide, I say that you glorify suicide by not taking this course, by not knowing the information, by not understanding what it is that creates the actual triggers for suicidal ideation. That is what glorifies suicide, the ignorance.
Wow, that's a great way to end that. So thank you very much for your support. We appreciate all that you've done. I think truly when I look at the 5 components of the classes, it seemed like a school counselor was working with you to sort of come up with those things. And the feedback that I've received, at least from the first few go-arounds of this course, have been nothing but positive and also insightful as far as what covering those areas. So I appreciate your passion. I am sorry for your loss, and I'm truly honored to be able to talk to you and learn more about your daughter, your wonderful daughter.
Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate your time and everything that Goucher College is doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for teaching.
It's been fun. It's a joy. Thank you.
I am, I pretty much cry every day with grief.
Oh, yeah,
but
I'm sure.
I honestly could sit here and say that, I cry tears of joy
with
regards to your course and your teaching and going above and beyond, and I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. But it is truly, from what you've done, from a loss and a tragedy to the positive, and being able to sit here is amazing. So thank you.
Thank you.
That was good.